So let's start today. So till now, we discussed about configuring ESXi. So the last session, like we discussed how to configure the ESXi, and on the top of ESXi, so we discussed like how to connect to ESXi with the help of a browser, and there are many ways we discussed how to connect to the ESXi. Now, if you have multiple ESXi on your network, and if you want to manage all the ESXi from a central point, so we need to configure the vCenter. So we already discussed about regarding vCenter installation, how to install, how to configure, as well as how to connect to the vCenter and how we make data center. And in that data center, how we can able to add all the ESXi. Okay. So instead of managing one by one ESXi, so we can, configure one of the centralized vCenter. And from that vCenter, we are going to connect all the ESXi. Okay. So that is the basic introduction for VMware vSphere. Okay, so from today, we are going to start the next session, which is very, very important. That is our networking part. So VMware networking plays very, very important role. So vSphere networking plays very, very important role. Like the way you have the network part for the physical session, the same thing, normally we need to understand here. Suppose this is your ESXi. On the top of ESXi, maybe we are going to configure multiple virtual machines. Okay. So always the question comes how this virtual machine works. Okay. So this virtual machine, let's say suppose this is my virtual machine, want to communicate to this virtual machine. This virtual machine maybe want to communicate to this virtual machine, which is running on the top of this ESXi. Okay. Similarly, you may have another ESXi. On this ESXi also you may have multiple virtual machines. Okay. So sometimes what happens? So this virtual machine, they want to communicate each other, which is running on the top of ESXi, or sometimes maybe this virtual machine want to talk to this virtual machine, which is running on the top of some other ESXi. Okay. You may have one more ESXi. Like this, you may have hundreds of ESXi. Okay. Not only that, maybe you may have the devices, you may have your client. Okay. So sometimes like the client want to access this virtual machine. Okay. So how the communication takes place, how your machine able to understand other devices, and what about the connectivity and what about the communication. Okay. So this is completely depends on networking part. Okay. Networking. Okay. So to understand networking, again, I'm starting from the basic. Okay. If you see my slide, okay. First of all, we need to understand what is a physical network. Okay, so anybody know what is physical network? So when you talk about physical network, so physical network is nothing but like, let's say, I want to have a network. Now we may have a switch and you may have the devices, servers, you may have a lot of computers here. Okay. So physical means all the devices, they are connected. How they are connected? With the help of the cable. Okay. So from switch, one of the device connected. From the switch, the clients are connected. So this connectivity we call a physical connectivity. Means the connectivity that you see, that is called a physical network, physical connectivity. Okay. So this connectivity is compulsory in order to make a network. So without cable, you never have any company network. So when you talk about on-premises network, so all the devices have to be connected physically. Okay. It may be a server, it may be a printer, it may be your client device, it may be, the router, it may be the firewall. So all the devices we are connecting to a switch, and this is your device from where all the devices are connecting. This is a central point. Okay. That is called physical network. Okay. Then we try to configure IP address so that they are also logically communicate. Okay. So this is our physical. Okay. If I show you one example here, let me see one example. Okay, we can take this. So this is a network. Okay. So network means like all the resources are connecting to a switch. Okay. So from switch, you may have a Wi-Fi device. From the Wi-Fi, now the Wi-Fi device also connected. Means this is a wireless router. From the wireless, whatever the laptop, whatever the wireless printer or any wireless resource you have, now it will be connecting to this Wi-Fi device. So that Wi-Fi device also connecting to a switch. Okay. So this is actually called a physical network. Okay. So what is physical network? A network of physical machines that are connected so that they can send and receive the data from each other. So VMware ESXi runs on a physical machine. This thing you need to keep in mind. Okay. So when you talk about our ESXi, so ESXi is nothing but will be running ESXi on a physical device. Okay. Now, the next thing is, what is virtual network? What do you mean by that? Now, let's say, suppose if I give a small example, like what is a virtual network? Okay. Let's say, suppose you are doing some course. Okay. Maybe you're doing, suppose like MCSE. Maybe you want to do a VMware, something you want to do the practicals. Okay. So certain courses you are doing. So for MCSE, if you want to do a practical for MCSE, so at least you need to have, suppose if you have physical machine, okay, so that physical machine you will connect to the direct switch. So you have server where you install Active Directory, you may have clients, okay. So that means this is your physical network where all the resources, all the devices are available. Now, this is the best practice if you have a physical machine, okay. But normally, like if I'm doing MCSE course and if you want to do any practical, so for me, it's not possible like just go market and purchase all the physical machine where you purchase a switch, you purchase multiple devices, connect and try to configure, then do practice. So all the time it's not easy, right? But because computers are not very cheap, okay? Only for the practice, we are not going to, invest, I think like 70 to 60,000, okay? So instead of that, what I can do now, I can have maybe my laptop. On the top of laptop, maybe I'll be having maybe certain simulators, or you can say the tools, or you can say application. In that, what I can do, I can make all my virtual labs. Like whatever the setup you see, this is called physical setup where you have cables, where you have a switch, where you have devices. This is your physical network. The same thing, what I can do all the thing in virtual. So virtual means, okay, so here also you may have server, here also you may have a client, and here you have maybe different things, but these are not physical machines. Okay, everything we are doing for the test purpose to understand our lab. Okay, that is your virtual. Okay, so the thing here we need to understand like what is virtual network. So virtual network is nothing but a network of virtual machine running on a physical machine. Okay, so you have many machines. Okay, so you may have multiple virtual machines. So that virtual machine running on the top of one particular device, and that can be connected logically to each other, so that they can able to send receive the data from each other. So virtual machine can be connected to the virtual network that you create when you add a network. Okay, so normally what happens? So last time, if you remember, like we created ESXi, and the reason for connecting, creating ESXi, you may have suppose multiple ESXi. Okay. So what is the reason like why we have ESXi? So that on the top of ESXi, we can have multiple virtual machines. Okay. So for me, it's not possible to have, all dedicated server for application, all dedicated, uh, device for dedicated services. So it's not possible for me. So what I can do, so one device, I can have multiple virtual machines. I can have one more device. Here also, I can have multiple virtual machines. Okay. So that means it looks like single device, but virtually it is working for 4 machines. Okay. It's like four virtual machines. So it looks like one device, so it is also 4 virtual machines. Okay. So here also you may have one device, but here you may have multiple like that. Okay. So virtual network means we have all the virtual machines created. So these virtual machines created in one device. Okay. So on the top of device, all the devices are connected. Okay. So this virtual machine maybe want to communicate to this virtual machine maybe want to communicate to this, or this virtual machine maybe want to communicate to this, or this virtual machine maybe want to access the client. Okay. So how we are going to set up this? Okay. So the main thing here is for we virtual machine is important. For we ESXi, for we all the setup is not important. We need this virtual machine. I want 24 by 7 access. Okay. To access that virtual machine, we have to do a lot of things. Okay. So that we are going to understand now. So what is virtual network? Let's see. So virtual network is nothing but a network of virtual machine running on a physical machine, running on a device that are connected, and logically connected means, all the virtual machine also they are going to communicate. And the main purpose of connecting all the devices so that they can able to send and receive the data. Okay. So that is the main important point. Now, any question? So when you talk about network, so the complete network depends on the switch. Okay. So on the network, we connect all the devices. It may be a computer, it may be a router, it may be a firewall, it may be, servers, it may be the printers. So whatever devices we are, using to make a network, all the devices we actually connect to a switch. So you may have a switch. On the top of switch, you connect all the devices so that we can make our network. Okay. So first thing, we have physical switch. So what is this physical switch? Physical switch is nothing but the device. Okay. It is going to manage the network traffic between the machines on a physical network. Okay. So this device is going to handle the traffic of all the machines which are connected. A switch has multiple ports, each of which can be connected to each single machine or another switch. Okay. So whatever the port you have, every port will be connecting a different device. Let's say one of the port I'm connecting server, one of the port I'm connecting computer, one of the port I'm connecting the router, one of the port I'll be connecting the firewall. As well as suppose if you have a big network, you may are connecting one more switch from here, like you may have a port from this port I'm connecting one more switch so that we can able to extend our network. Okay. So each port can be configured to behave in certain ways depending on the need of machine connected to it. Okay. The switch learn which hosts are connected to which of its ports and uses that information to forward the traffic to the physical machine. The switch are the core of a physical network. Multiple switches can be connected together to form a larger network. Okay. So that means this is the only device where you connect all the devices of a network. Okay. The switch understand, okay, so which port, which device is connected. Okay. Switch understand all the MAC addresses. You know how the switch understand all the people. The switch understand each and every device only based on the MAC address. Okay. That is, you may have a MAC table here. So with that database, the switch is going to understand like whenever request coming to the switch is going to perform, it will take a request from one port and it will try to forward a request to another port. That is completely depends on the database. Okay. So that database, we call it as a MAC database, MAC table. Okay. So switch, we call, these are like the core of physical network. So unless until you have a switch, you cannot able to make a network. Okay. The switch plays very important role in order to make a network. Okay. Similarly, when you talk about vSphere networking, like the way you have physical network, to make a physical network, we'll be using a physical switch. Similarly, now when you talk about virtual network, to create a virtual network, we require a virtual switch. So that virtual switch in our ESXi will represent as a standard switch. Okay, so make it clear. So once you install ESXi, you may have one switch. The name of the switch we represent as a standard switch. Okay. So what is this standard switch? It works much like a physical switch, like the way you are connecting. You may have physical. How you are connecting? With the help of cable, we are connecting all the devices. This is physical switch. Similarly, once you install ESXi, on the ESXi, one switch is, suppose you have a virtual switch. Okay. So whenever you make any virtual machine on the top of ESXi, So these virtual machine also connecting to this particular switch. So how it's connecting in detail, we try to discuss. Okay. So it detects which virtual machines are logically connected to each virtual force. Okay. So once you create a virtual machine, so that virtual machine is going to connect. Okay. So this is a virtual switch. This switch is going to have virtual force. So whatever virtual machines you create, so that virtual machine is going to connect to this virtual port of this switch. Okay, and uses that information to forward the traffic to a correct virtual machine. A vSphere standard switch can be connected to physical switch by using a physical Ethernet adapter, and also referred as uplink. So we are going to discuss, this is very, very important. So we need to understand like what is uplink and what is Ethernet adapter. Okay, so in seconds we'll see this. Okay, to join virtual network with physical network. Okay, so this type of connection is similar, connecting physical switches together to create a large network. Even though like vSphere standard switch work much like a physical switch, it does not have some advanced functionality of a physical switch. Means now there will be some kind of advanced functionality may not be going to support these switch. Okay, so what kind of functionality is not supporting? So again, we are going to see that. Okay, so but the main thing we need to understand here, the way you have a physical switch, the same way you may also have virtual switch. Okay, so this virtual switch also have virtual port. Okay, so whenever if any virtual machine want to communicate to any other virtual machine, so the request go to the virtual switch, and that virtual switch is going to know, okay, from where the request is coming and to whom that virtual machine want to talk. So according to the switch, it is going to forward a request. Okay. So this switch is going to work same as it is as like your physical switch. Only the thing is, this is your physical switch and this is your virtual switch. Okay. Now, if you have, suppose if you want to extend your network, you may have multiple physical switches. Similarly, now if you have many virtual machines, you can also have multiple virtual switches. Okay, but every virtual switch you require a physical adapter. Okay, so whenever you have whatever the traffic actually forwarding on the physical network, so that network is going to forward with the help of physical adapter. Okay, so this thing we need to understand now. Okay, so what is LAN card? If you remember, like last time I already told you to learn about the LAN card. Okay, so let me explain here only. So this is my server. On the top of server, let's say I have just only one NIC card. So what is the use of this NIC card? So from switch, I'm connecting the cable. Okay. Okay. But remember, this NIC card we call it is an entry and exit point of a machine. Okay. LAN card is like a gate of your machine. And don't get me wrong, even whenever I say a gate, even router is also called gate. Okay. But here some kind of difference is there. So here I'm saying LAN card is a gate of computer. It's not a network gate. I'm not talking about a complete network. I'm just talking about this device. So whenever if this machine wants to access any data of any other device, so how the request actually went to that particular machine. Okay, so the request first it exists from this card. If I give an example in normal ways. Okay, so whenever we build our home, okay, so how we enter or exit from home, we try to put a gate, right? That is called entry and exit point. Okay, so if anybody wants to enter, that person has to be used gate. If somebody want to exit from our home, again they also use gate. That is the main purpose of a gate. Okay. Okay. So here you may have all the rooms, everything. See, I'm not going inside. So the main thing here, this is the gate from where the traffic is coming and the traffic is exit. That thing we need to understand first. Okay. Similarly, now suppose you have one more NIC card. So if you already have one NIC card, then why we need one more? Now I need one more. I need one more. Okay. So why we need like multiple NIC cards? Okay. So basically, suppose if you're working, on a small network, and here I'm configuring AD, I'm configuring some of the things. That means we don't require multiple cards. Okay. If I'm using this server as a physical device, okay, maybe one or maybe two NIC cards are enough. Everything is fine. If one NIC card gone, even I can able to handle this server from another. We can have NIC pinning. Okay. But when you talk about virtualization, when you talk about a big network, okay, now let's say instead of my independent home, let's say this is apartment. What happens? So apartment doesn't have one particular gate. Nowadays, you may have two ways. Okay. So one of the way, this is just only for entry purpose. This is for the exit purpose. Okay. Nowadays, there is a rule. If somebody want to build apartment, you need to compulsory, you need to have two ways. Means one way you need to enter, from other way you need to exit. Similarly, if you have suppose a big shopping mall, like we have Hyderabad Central, Chennai shopping mall. So that means like you may have multiple entry ways, multiple exits. Okay. So based on the condition, you have to do this. So the thing which we need to understand here, so when you are virtualizing, okay, so this is my ESXi. On the top of ESXi, suppose you may have virtual machines, hundreds of virtual machines. So how you want to manage the traffic of this virtual machine? How the client, let's say you have a client, how this client is going to connect to this virtual machine. It's just not like, just draw a diagram and say, okay, this virtual machine is connecting to this physical device. How the traffic of this virtual machine is actually forwarding to the virtual, and how this virtual machine is actually connecting the physical. Okay. So whenever any traffic exists on the network, definitely we use a card. This is a WAN card. Okay. So that means one NIC card. Okay. What happens if one NIC card failed? You may have one more. Okay. But ESXi is not going to handle only one kind of traffic. Means ESXi doesn't mean you just have only virtual machine. ESXi, you have many things. Okay. So in coming session, we try to see, what are the traffic we have on the ESXi. That means you may have multiple NIC cards. Okay. So if you talk about right now, like today, if you go market and if you want to purchase a server, and if that server, suppose if you want to use for the hypervisor, then compulsory you require multiple NIC cards. So one NIC card is not enough. Okay. So you may have two NIC cards, you may have four NIC cards, you may have eight NIC cards, you may have maybe 10 NIC cards. Okay. You also have 16 NIC cards. I have seen. Okay. And I heard maximum we have 32 NIC cards, but I have not seen that device. Just I heard. Okay. I don't know whether it's available or not, but I heard there will be 32 NIC cards available. Okay. So that means if you have that many NIC cards, see the way you have multiple options, even it's very difficult to understand the traffic. Okay. So if you understand, that means you can you can play anything. So what the vSphere networking is doing, so here you may have two types of network we have already discussed. So physical network, a network of virtual machines. Then we talk about the virtual network. In virtual network, we have a standard switch. In that standard switch, we have some kind of port group. So first, I'll show you a physical switch so that you can able to understand the virtual switch. Uh, See, this is our physical switch from Cisco when you purchase device. And it's not compulsory like we need to have a Cisco switch. You may have Juniper, you may have, Barcoda, you may have, Hawaii, Hawaii, Avaya, or you may have different companies. Okay. So this is our physical switch. So any question here? Have you seen port different? See, these are the ports. And here we also have some extra port. What is it? So from mhm. Yeah. So if you are a network administrator, that means our responsibility to manage these switches. Okay. So switch we have two types. One is called a manageable switch as well as non-manageable switch. So when you talk about non-manageable means, let's say, I just want to make a simple network. I go market, I just want to make my own lab in my home. Okay. I have maybe two, three laptop, or maybe I have some maybe like 5 to 10 computers. So I can connect all these computers and I can make my simple network. I don't require this kind of thing. This is called manageable. Manageable means these switches, it actually depends on your instruction. The way you configure, it is going to work. Okay. So these switches, let's say suppose one of the, see, this is not virtual, this is physical switch first. Okay. So let's say this port I connected one computer, which is sales, and one of the port is connected, suppose sales, marketing. So both the people, they are connected to the same switch. Okay. So whenever if this person want to communicate directly, it's coming. Why? Because both the people, they are connected to the same switch. Okay. But I am the administrator. So boss give me the restriction. Okay. Do something so that like these two people, they will not communicate each other. So what I'll do, inside the switch, I'm going to make VLAN. Okay. This is our network administrator responsibility. So what he will do, he with these ports, these are the management ports. Okay. So from here, we try to configure, we just connect to the switch, and in switch, we are going to make VLAN. Okay. So one of the VLAN I created, let's say like VLAN 1, and that VLAN 1, I'm going to add this many ports. I create one more VLAN, I'm going to add this many ports. And so when you make different VLANs, so whatever the people available here, these people, they will not able to communicate. Whatever the people available here, this will not be communicated. Okay. For security reason, you can have multiple VLAN. Okay. So normally what happened here, even though all the devices connected on a same switch, but the switch is not forwarding a request of this port to this port or this port to this port. Why? Because of security reason, we restricted. Okay. So here you see, not only we have these ports, we also have some ports from where you can able to manage, to do some administration, to do certain tasks of administrator. Now we have certain extra ports. Okay. Apart from that, we suppose if you work on core level switches, you may have a lot of categories. Okay. So switch doesn't mean you just have only like 8 ports, 16 ports. Switch, you may have 24 ports, 32 ports, 64 ports, 128 ports, 240 ports, 360, 720. You may have this kind of switches. That is physical. Similarly, so when you create a virtual, when you install ESXi, you are making virtual machine. So that virtual machine is going to connect to the virtual switch. That switch, we call it as standard. In a standard, we have two types of port groups. Means one of the port group we have VM network port and VM kernel port. This thing you need to understand. Okay. So let me show you. So once you install, see, this is our ESXi. Once you install ESXi, let's say suppose you have virtual switch. So these virtual switch, you have two types of ports. Like the way you have ports on the physical switch, in virtual switch also you have two types of ports. Okay. One of the port we call VM network, VM network, VM network, and we have VM kernel. Okay. Let's say suppose you make virtual machine. Okay. So this virtual, so when you talk about like VM network, this port is specially designed to connect the virtual machine. Okay. So whatever virtual machine you are creating, you may have maybe 10, 20, 100, 200, doesn't matter, whatever virtual machine you create, all these virtual machines are actually connecting to this virtual VM network. And this port group is created. Okay. Another port group we call VM kernel. This port group is specially designed for multiple traffic. Okay. So one of the traffic you may have management traffic, means how you connected to this ESXi. Now I'm connecting ESXi from my laptop. Okay, that means over the network I'm connecting to this. Okay, so the traffic is going to handled by VM kernel. Okay, and VM kernel also used for vMotion traffic. It also used for storage traffic. It also used for we have something called virtual fan. Okay, like this we have multiple reasons here. Okay, so this is for the management purpose, vMotion. So I'll show you like here in the slide. So what is VM kernel? VM kernel, it actually based on TCP/IP, means every VM kernel port need IP address so that it is going to forward requests from one to other. So VM kernel networking layer provides connectivity to host and handle standard infrastructure traffic of vSphere like vMotion, IP storage, and most important thing, fault tolerance and the virtual sign. Even it is for management purpose. Okay. So one of the port group which we call like VM network port group. So VM network means like it is specified port configuration options such as a bandwidth, a limitation, and VLAN tagging policies for each member port. So network policies connected, network services connected to the standard switch through a port group. So port group define how a connection is made through a switch to the network. Typically, like a single switch is associated with one or more port groups. So one of the port group we have like VM kernel, and one of the port group we have VM network. So when you once you create a switch, automatically, when you install ESXi, automatically one of the switch is created. That switch we call standard switch. On the standard switch, you have two types of port group. One is VM kernel as well as VM network. So VM kernel is specially designed for management purpose, for the vMotion, for the fault tolerance, IT, storage, for the virtual SAN. Whereas VM network is specially designed only to connect the virtual machine. Okay. So let's see. I'll connect to my ESXi. So last time, like we already created our vSphere. So from here, I'm going to connect to my vCenter server. So HTTPS colon 192.168. What's our vCenter IP? I don't remember, maybe 155. Let's try. Okay, I have already done. Okay, we have vCenter IP 205. This is the one. Which one overlaps? This one? 200 or 150? Okay, let me see here. Okay. Oh, see our our IP is 61, 62, 63, and one of the vCenter not 60. 65 is our vCenter IP, right? Our domain name is wipro.com. So here I'll give, we already log in, right? Administrator @wipro.com, password. So once you connect to your vCenter, on the top of vCenter, we have already created, we already added our ESXi. Okay. Now, if you want to understand networking, just go to configuration. On the configuration, we have networking part. Just go here. On the networking part, you have options. You can see this. The option here, we have virtual switches. Okay. Now, first of all, if you go to vCenter, if you go summary, and first thing we need to see like how many NIC cards are there. Okay. That means if you install ESXi on direct physical machine, in that physical machine, whatever the NIC cards are available, all the NIC cards will be displayed here. Okay. So last time, if you remember, like we actually using our nested lab, means we actually using our ESXi as a virtual machine. So once you make a virtual machine, automatically one NIC card is created. That is one NIC card. Okay. But for the virtual environment, so what we can do, we don't require one NIC card. One NIC card is not sufficient for the virtualization. Okay. So now, if you want to add multiple NIC cards, what you need to do, you can go to the ESXi. This is my, see, I just come to my VMware workstation, and graphically, suppose if you're adding, if you go settings, and if you try to add multiple NIC cards, let's say how we can add, just go the settings of virtual machine, and here you can say add, and here, what do you want to add? I want to add network adapter. So either you can say network adapter or NIC card, LAN card, Ethernet card, all are the same name. Just select network adapter, finish. Okay. One more NIC card I want to add, finish. I want to add one more NIC card, you can finish. Okay. So that means you can have multiple NIC cards. So this is my first NIC card, second NIC card, third, fourth. Okay, let me add one more so that we can see some kind of policies, some kind of NIC taming. So that means suppose if you have virtual machine which is running on the top of ESXi, so whatever the NIC card you added, so this NIC card information will not be updated. If I even refresh, that is not going to update. So until you restart your ESXi, the information is not going to update. So what you do, okay, so you need to restart that. See, still if I refresh, it is not going to show that. So for ESXi, even showing there is only one NIC card. Okay, so manually we need to restart that. I just go here, right click, restart, or if you want to add, just power off this, and from here also you can manually add. Just edit. So by default, just we have one NIC card, that is our NAT. I add one more. But if you are doing this on physical machine, compulsory you need require multiple physical cards. Okay, so that's why like virtual machines are important. I added total. I have 5 NIC cards. So I power on this. Now the same thing I can do here. I just power off this. I can go to the virtual machine or not power on. Power off. Right click. Okay. So edit. Now here also I add more adapters. And see whatever you are using, you use that. So I'm using NAT. So default it will be NAT only. If you're using bridge, so use bridge setting. Okay. If you're using your custom network adapter, you can use that. So all the ESXi, I added multiple NIC cards. So once you restart, and when that ESXi comes, now one more time I can refresh. Why? Because see, once you restart, it is going to disconnect from your host. So from vCenter, you can see saying host is power state, means it is going to power. It's already power off. Let me see. Scheme is coming. See, all the ESXIs are not restarted. So when it comes, all it is going to show the information. Got it? So if I want, I can do all the setting by default. But even like when you do practical, you have to know this. So that's why everything I'm doing in front of you. 651. Okay, it's coming. A652. A653 is also coming. One more refresh. Yeah, okay. Now you can see how many NIC cards. So NIC cards showing 5 NIC cards. So why we need multiple NIC cards? What is the advantage? We'll see. Okay. So now when you go to, if I want to configure the networking on the ESXi, networking is nothing but like the connectivity of the virtual machine, the connectivity of this ESXi to the physical network, that is completely depends on the switch. Okay. So you just go configuration, that is configure and virtual switch. Okay. So when you see here, this is like a switch. You know, the way you have physical switch, same we have virtual switch. So this switch we call, this is our standard switch. Standard switch. So this standard switch, we have two types of port group. One of the port group we have VM kernel port, and we also have VM network port. So VM network, it is going to use to handle the traffic of the virtual machine, and VM kernel, it is using for handle the traffic of management, handle the traffic of vMotion. It is going to handle the traffic of, the fault tolerance, okay, virtual SAN, okay. So VM kernel, it's actually, whenever you try to create a VM kernel, okay, so that network, you have to use one IP address, okay. So we are going to see that, okay. So this is called the logical part of your ESXi, and this is called the physical part. Means how this ESXi is actually connected to the physical. See, this is your physical adapters. Okay. So whatever the LAN cards are available, so this is called the uplink. Okay. You may have multiple NIC card here. Okay. That means whatever the traffic is actually exists from this virtual switch, that traffic is going to exist on the network, on the physical network, with the help of a NIC card. The name of the NIC card is VMNIC 0. And here you have one physical switch. This is like from here, the connectivity we have to the physical. And from the physical, you have all the external parts. Okay, understand? So if you have any question, please ask me. This is your ESXi. On the ESXi, this will be a physical switch. So this is actually called uplink. From here, the traffic is actually go to the switch. From the switch, the traffic will went to all the physical machine whatever you have. Okay. So if any virtual here we have physical computer, and with this, suppose this person wants to access the virtual machine which is available here on the ESXi. So first the request will go to the physical switch. From the physical switch, that request actually coming to ESXi from this LAN card. From this LAN card, the request will go to the switch. From this virtual switch, the request go to this virtual machine, which is created here. Okay, so this is how the topology works. Okay, so let me create one more switch here. So whenever if you want to make any virtual switch, just you have to click add networking, and here it will ask you like, what do you want? You want to add kernel adapter, virtual network, virtual machine port group, or you want to add a physical network adapter. Okay. So remember, suppose if you create a virtual switch, so that virtual switch first we have to create with the physical network adapter. Means, see, I'm making a virtual switch. So that switch, how the traffic, like here you may have, suppose maybe after few words, maybe I'm making virtual machine. So the traffic of these virtual machines, how it is going to exist to the physical network. Okay. So here you need to have one NIC card. So means here you have to configure the uplink. So that uplink we represent as a physical network adapter. Okay. So later on you may have virtual port here. You can you can create multiple virtual ports, or you may have a VM kernel port group. So multiple port group you can create in one switch. Okay. To make a physical, if you want to make virtual switch, you can first assign one network adapter. Why? Because see, right now the switch, the ESXi which I'm setting, so that ESXi have 5 NIC cards. One NIC card is already using my first switch, and here it will try to show you. I make new virtual switch. So I don't want existing one. I'm making a new one. Next, okay. So he is asking assign network adapter. So that means one NIC card is already using my first switch. So remaining 4 NIC cards are available. So by using, so here is saying, okay, which NIC card you want to use so that it is going to handle the traffic, whatever coming to that particular switch. Okay, so I'm connecting first NIC card. That is second. Finish. Okay. So here you can see this is already created, where you have management, where you have virtual machine. And here you may have one more switch. So whatever port group I create here, so the information of these virtual ports, it is going to handle by this physical adapter. That means, so this ESXi have 2 physical cards. One of the card I'm using for this switch, virtual switch, one of the NIC card I'm using for this virtual switch. And it is not compulsory to have multiple switches. One switch you can have multiple port groups. Okay, just to understand the concept I created here. Okay. Now the next thing here, let's say on the top of these virtual switch, I want to handle the traffic of vMotion. Okay. So vMotion is nothing but, suppose maybe I'll be running some virtual machine, and maybe future. Okay. Maybe I have some maintenance work, or maybe I'm going to shut down this ESXi. So whatever the virtual machines are available, I want to migrate that virtual machine from one to other ESXi. Okay. So for that purpose, what we need to do, we have to make one VM kernel port for the vMotion. Okay. So how we can make VM kernel for the vMotion? So here only you can click. See, I'm creating on the switch 1. The default switch which is created, that is switch 0. This is switch 0. This is switch 1. I just go add networking, and here I'm making VM kernel network adapter. So why I'm making this one? Okay. So this is for creating a service like vMotion for iSCSI network, that is a storage. So for storage, we have NFS or FOC, and we also have fault tolerance or virtual SAN or host management. For that particular traffic, we are going to create a VM kernel adapter. So I just click next. So we are creating this port group on switch 1. Next. And every VM kernel, as I told you, so we can try to put a name here, vMotion. And every VM kernel, it is going to handle an IP. Okay, so you can use a static IP. So 192. So 192.168.57. So my vCenter IP is 65. So I start from 67. And the subnet mask I'll be giving here 192.168. Subnet mask 255.255.255. That is my default subnet, and the DNS is already there 192.168.57.60. That is already given. Next and finish. Okay. So that means whenever I'm going to handle a vMotion traffic, so from this ESXi, the traffic will exist from this physical adapter to the another ESXi with this physical card, vMotion traffic. Okay. Now, suppose if you have multiple switches, so what we can do now, management traffic or vMotion traffic I can maintain in one switch, and all the virtual machine traffic I can handle from this particular switch. Okay. So what we can do, so whatever the traffic which is available, see, management traffic is actually handled by my first switch, that is switch 0. So we can migrate this traffic to this one. Okay. So in previous version of vSphere, means if you talk about like 5.0 or before that, whatever the version was there, in that time, whatever the whatever the switch you have, and in that switch, whatever port group you created, you have to manage this port group on that particular switch only. But from 5.5, what the VMware has done now, not only you can use this port group on a particular, you can even migrate this port group to another switch also. Okay, that is possible. How we can do that? Now, first you can go edit, or here you can just click here, and here we have migrate VM kernel adapter. Okay, so on switch 0, one management port group is there. Okay, so this port group we can handle here. So the name also I can give management, and we don't have any VLAN ID for that. Next and finish. Okay, that means whatever the management traffic which is handled by this virtual switch. So from here, now that traffic is going to, from here it will remove, and that traffic is going to handle by this switch 1. Okay, that means if I'm connecting to the ESXi, so that is with the help of this NIC card. Means traffic coming to my ESXi from this particular NIC card. Okay. Now this NIC card is going to handle the traffic of the virtual machine. Even in virtual machine, we have a lot of a lot of categories in virtual machine. Let's say you may have some DMZ virtual machine, you may have web server virtual machine, you may have production virtual machine, like this. Okay. So what I can now, you can have we can make one more port group for the virtual machine, so that whatever the virtual machine which I'm creating, let's say you suppose I created some virtual machine, I don't want this virtual machine communicate to other port group. So you can make multiple port group here. Just add, and you can click virtual machine port group for the standard switch. And here, okay, we are making on the switch 0 only. And what port group you want? Name I'll be giving, let's say DMZ, and I'll keep it in 10 DMZ. See, VLAN ID. So this VLAN ID, you can put any. Finish. So here you can see. The next question comes. So now what happens if this NIC card failed? How the traffic of this virtual machine will communicate the physical network, and how this virtual machine they are going to communicate to other ESXi virtual machine, right? So total on this ESXi, I have total 5 NIC cards. From 5, now we are using only 2 NIC cards. What about this remaining? Even we have more 3 NIC cards. Okay, so what we can do? We can use those NIC cards as we can say NIC teaming or fault tolerance. Okay, for load balance we can use that. So how we can do that? So you can go edit. Okay, just select the switch. You can go edit, and here you can go. Okay. Not from here. Let me show. Okay. See here only the option is there. Manage net physical adapter. So by default, this switch, switch is having only one NIC card. I can add one more. VMNIC 2. Okay. So now what will happen here? So the traffic, whenever it's coming to the switch, is going to handle by one NIC card. If one NIC card failed, now you may have another NIC card also. Okay, that is called the load balance. If one of the NIC cards failed here, so the traffic coming to this virtual switch, what were the virtual machines you created here to DMZ or VM network here? So the traffic automatically comes with the help of this virtual NIC card. So see, this is actually a physical NIC card, and this physical NIC card actually connects to the virtual machine, and that virtual switch. From virtual switch, you have the virtual port. So this is your external part, and this is your internal part. For here also, if you want, you can able to give your fault tolerance, load balance. So here also, suppose if one of the NIC cards failed, even I can connect with the help of another NIC card. Okay, that means in your ESXi, if you have suppose 10 NIC cards, all the 10 NIC cards you need to connect cable. Okay, from the physical switch, you have to connect all the 10 cables. Just having only NIC card is not enough. Even connectivity is also there. Okay. So this is about today's class. So today we have done the basic networking for standard switch. Okay. So do this practice. If you have any question, you can ask me.